This video is an introduction to ratios and proportions as they apply to what you're learning. So a ratio is a comparison using division of two quantities of the same kind. So there could be gear ratios and compression ratios, tire profile ratios, all kinds of things that apply in your field. So here's an example of a gear ratio. You might look at two gears and how they interlock, and you have 64 teeth in one gear, 16 teeth in the other. The gear ratio would then be 64 teeth over 16 teeth. The teeth part canceled out. You have teeth on the top and teeth on the bottom, so those cancel out. And you can reduce the ratio 64 over 16, both divide by 4, and you end up with 4 over 1. So the gear ratio becomes 4 over 1. So write a ratio to describe the following relationship. A gear of 25 teeth to 10 teeth. So we're going to write 25 teeth to 10 teeth. And then we get to cancel some things out here. So we're going to cancel out the teeth and teeth. So the teeth go away because ratios have no units. And then we can reduce the top and bottom by dividing them both by 5. And when you do, you end up with 5 over 2. So a ratio of 5 to 2. You can write it as 5 divided by 2. You can write the word 5, TO, 2, or you can do 5 colon 2 to describe the ratio. Another ratio you might come across is a compression ratio. For the compression ratio, you're looking at the expanded volume to the compressed volume. And it's always the expanded on the top and the compressed on the bottom when you're doing the compression ratio. So here's an example problem. Look at the expanded of 475 cubic centimeters to 50 cubic centimeters compressed. Remember, our compression ratio is expanded over compressed. So we're going to look at that, and we see we put 475 on the top and 50 cubic centimeters on the bottom. We end up with 19 over 2. But when we're looking at specifically a compression ratio, they're always written so that the denominator is 1. So you want to go ahead and divide that 19 divided by 2 to 9.5. Or you could just do 475 divided by 50 straight up and get 9.5 equals 1, because you want your compression ratio, specifically this one, to be something compared to 1. Okay, so a proportion is just taking two ratios and setting them equal to each other. So there are no units in a ratio, so there's no units in a proportion. That is, you could put a unit here and here, but they'd cancel each other out just like they did in ratios. So we're going to look at how to use proportions to solve for missing pieces of information. So solve the following proportions. You may be already familiar with how to do this, but here's a proportion that says 4 over 5 is equal to P over 20, and P is the missing piece. So the best way to solve this is to do it by cross-multiplying. Sometimes it's set up easily, and you could say, okay, well, I see 5, and 5 times what is going to give me 20? Okay, 5 times 4 will give me 20. So that means on the top I'm going to do 4 times 4, the same number, to get my answer for P. So that P is going to be 16. We'll do the answer. P is going to be 16. Let me show you how it works with cross-multiplying. For cross-multiplying, you're going to do 4 times 20, and you're going to set that equal to 5 times P. So it's going to look like this. 5 times P equals 4 times 20. Now you've made an equation, and you can solve it in a couple of short steps. So 5P equals 80. P equals 80 divided by 5, because I'm going to get this 5 away from the P, so divide both sides by 5. And P equals 16, which is the answer we got right there. So for this example, I probably maybe wouldn't have done the cross multiply. I could have just said, okay, well, 5 times what? And did it logically in my head. However, look at the second example. You might be able to quickly look at this and figure out 2 times something. Maybe it's 50 something, maybe it's 60 in your head. But if you can, use cross multiplication. It's going to work. So you multiply, basically you're going to be multiplying across the diagonal. So you're going to say, okay, 3 times this number is equal to 2 times y. So you do cross multiplication. So when you do, you're going to end up getting 2 times y equals 3 times 114. And so 2 times y equals 342. And divide both sides by 2. And you're going to get y equals 171. And so either method's going to work, but the cross multiplier will be something that will always work for you, and it's probably the easiest way to go about finding a missing number, especially if you're working with decimals. Let's look at some other examples of proportion problems. Here's a problem where a gear ratio is 6:1 and there are 12 teeth on a smaller gear. How many teeth are there in the larger gear? You need to set up a ratio and then set up another ratio, and one ratio could be what the gear ratio is, and the other one could be what the number of teeth are. Set them equally to each other to create a proportion that you can solve. So I'm going to use the gear ratio right here, and I think it's really helpful to put the words to the side of how you're going to set it up. So I'm going to set it up with large on the top, small on the bottom. So my large number for my gear was 6, and the small was 1. So then I look and I say, okay, what were the number of teeth? The teeth in the smaller gear were 12. 12 small. I look where my small was at the bottom, set it up. Okay, so now I'm missing the number here. And I'm going to use that logical method and say, okay, 1 times what is 12? Well, times 12. Okay, so on the top I'm just going to do 6 times 12. 6 times 12 is 72. And if you weren't sure, you just cross multiply. 1 times 72 equals 6 times 12, and that works. Okay, one more example, setting these up. The compression ratio of a Datsun 280Z is 8.3 to 1. It doesn't sound very easy to multiply in our head. If the compressed volume of the cylinder is 36 cc's, what is the expanded volume? Okay, so over here I'm going to set up my proportion. I know I'm going to put everything that's expanded on the top, everything that's compressed on the bottom. Okay, so for expanded compression ratio, I've got 8.3 on the top because expanded is always on the top with the compression ratio, so you have to do it that way anyhow. And the compressed was 1. And it says the compressed volume of the cylinder is 36 cc, so compressed down here, 36 cc. Okay, how am I going to go about solving this? Okay, well I'm going to do 8.3 times 36 because to solve these, I do that cross multiplying. 8.3 times 36. Now the other piece is 1, so I have to divide by 1 afterwards, but that's pretty easy. I can divide by 1 pretty easily. My answer is going to end up to be 298.8 cc's. So I hope this introduction to ratios and proportions has helped you feel a little more comfortable with this material, and you feel confident to go ahead with the homework and the quizzes. Good luck.